Well, everybody, we have done it. We have successfully navigated our way through comparing the first and second industrial revolutions. And of course, now that we're complete, I like to review, so I think it'd be appropriate to go ahead and kind of just take a few minutes here and kind of walk through what we've done over the course of the last couple of weeks. We had the Venn diagram up here on the board, and in the center, I basically put the areas that we would see commonalities in between the first and second IR. I had the new energy sources, inventions, industries, social classes, living and working conditions, the social impact. All of those things took place in both the first and the second IR. I guess our task was really to determine how were they going to be different. So let's go ahead and just kind of take a quick review, since we've covered a lot of material in a short amount of time. Of course, we started with the first IR up here in Great Britain, 1750 to 1850 approximately. And then we listed up here on the board some of the specific reasons that it may have began in Great Britain. And these obviously is not an exhaustive list, but certainly I think some of the things up here on the board, whether it be natural resources, agriculture, capital, government policies, entrepreneurs, new markets, transportation, population, all those things really could go into being some of the factors that allowed the first IR to begin in Great Britain. And then of course we talked about some of the new energy sources. We talked about early on it was water, of course, but then eventually coal became the dominant power source. We talked about the industries of the first IR, beginning with the textile industry, then also with the coal mining and the mining of iron ore. We talked about some of the inventions. You guys, I'll try to list some of these on the board. You can see them all. I don't need to run through all of them, but a lot of the first invention, obviously one of the biggest ones probably was the steam engine, which of course initially was just invented basically to get water out of mines so it could dig down deeper and get more coal. Of course, then later they're going to realize how many different things they can do with the steam engine, but that's really, really big. But then the other ones, many of them had to do with really the either spinning or weaving of cotton into cloth. So a lot of big inventions there. I have them listed here on the board. We talked about the horrible living and working conditions that people in the early industrial towns had to experience. We talked about overcrowding. We talked about pollution. No running water, sewer systems, disease, pollution. The working conditions, of course, 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, dangerous machinery, the wages, the poor ventilation. Really, the working class did suffer early on during the first IR. So we listed some of those, and obviously there could be a laundry list of things, more ideas we could put on the board, but we just don't have any more room for that. So anyways, we also talked about some of the social impact then. The social impact down here, we talked about the industrial middle class and the industrial working class. The industrial middle class was basically the factory owners. The industrial working class would have been those people working the long, arduous hours, 12 to 16 hours, low pay. That would have been the working class. And then we also talked about a new idea, the idea of socialism, particularly the utopian socialists. Okay, the utopian socialists who believe that we could create this utopia, this perfect society, if we could only get government to take control of the means of production and redistribute the wealth and make a more fair, equal society and put the means of production back into the hands of the workers. And again, many of these ideas, originated because of the horrible working and living conditions that people were seeing in these factory towns. So that's the first IR, and we also illustrated it. And of course, hey, if you drew the Venn diagram here, you might think of different illustrations. These were just ones that came to my mind. Of course, began in Great Britain, so I drew Great Britain. Of course, you also see, illustration here with the coal mines, with the coal carts there, the textile factories, the early steam locomotive right there. This here, of course, is child labor in the coal mines. A lot of children were used because of how small they were and their size. They could get in these mine shafts much easier than an adult, so that represents that. And then of course this one here, I actually kind of like this one here. That just is a symbol of an individual being on the clock. An individual being on the clock where their life is not determined by the sun and the seasons, but now determined by time. And I think that is a big change that took place in the first IR. So there you have it, guys. That's the first IR. Great Britain, 1750 to 1850. And then, of course, as we move beyond 1850, we move into the second industrial revolution. And of course, the first thing we needed to talk about there was, where did it take place? It took place in Western Europe and the United States. We talked about some of the primary energy sources, and the big one that we contrasted with coal was electricity. The early industries, of course, oil and steel, and boy, we could make a lot of videos about that, about how much that has changed society, and all the inventions and all the machinery and everything that has happened in cities that have been built, and transportation systems as a result of oil and steel. We also talked about some of the inventions. We focused a little bit on Henry Ford's assembly line and how that initially was invented to roll automobiles off the line, and it made that more affordable to the average person. But also, it just, mass production. Okay, it led to mass production, and that really has helped any industry make products quicker, faster, more cheaply, which allowed the average common person to be able to afford them. And then, of course, we also had to get into some of the social impact, guys. The social impact, also the second IR, and we got into the living and working conditions here. And as bad as things were in the first IR, things do begin to get better in the second IR. We talked about how there were reformers that were pushing governments to clean up cities in areas of having running water, sewage systems, sanitation, building inspections and codes, to make living environments better for the people. We also listed on here some of the working conditions, how trade unions were being formed, and they were fighting for higher wages and better hours, and medical insurance and vacation. Many of these people now were semi-skilled or skilled workers who were more highly educated. Child labor laws began to be passed during the second IR that limited the type of hours and the amount of hours that children and age at which children could work. So those were all things that took place during the second IR. We also got into the aspect of women's suffrage, and how after 1850 you're going to see movements arise where women are beginning to take political action and fighting for full voting rights. You're also going to see governments begin to fund public education, right? They need a higher educated population, more skilled workers. And so they begin to, put money in to educating citizens, and of course they also want to, promote patriotism. So all those areas were reasons why governments began to fund education. We saw new social classes in Europe begin to emerge. You had a new elite that were the upper crust in society. They were the ones that got the, best military jobs, the government jobs. You had you still had a middle class, thriving middle class, white collar workers, professionals, engineers, doctors, lawyers. And of course, you also, in Europe at this time after 1850, certainly moving towards World War I, 80% of the people were still in the working class, right? That could have been anybody from, small peasant farmers to semi-skilled or skilled laborers working in factories. So, so you had new social classes. You also had new ideas, right? New ideas. We turned our attention briefly to Karl Marx, who was the father of modern socialism and communism, and how his ideas of the working class, which he called the proletariat, rising up and overthrowing the industrial bourgeoisie and taking over the means of production. Those ideas and those theories began to take some root in Europe after 1850. As you move into the late 1870s, 80s, and certainly when you get into the 1900s, you're going to see multiple communist revolutions in the name of Karl Marx. And so, his new ideas, they impacted the world. You guys, they impacted the world. Again, whether you buy into the philosophy there or not, I think we have to acknowledge that certainly it's had a big impact moving forward. And certainly when we get into the 20th century, we're going to refer back to Karl Marx again. So, and again, I guess, I illustrated the second IR. Not totally sure if this would be the same images you would use, but I certainly had the United States. I had, the light bulb there for electricity, oil wells, high-rise skyscrapers representing steel. Of course, my automobile. This here, I think about this one right here. It might look like a table with a bunch of boxes sitting on it, but actually it's supposed to be an assembly line. You'll have to use your imagination a little bit, but that's supposed to be an assembly line. But hey, that's all right. It's all good. This here, the gears, the person here, it could be a child, it could be an adult, in the gears just represents the, a person being taken advantage of by the capitalist industrial system. That would have been, of course, the viewpoint of Karl Marx, of what he thought was going on. But that was the image I used there to kind of represent Karl Marx's ideas on socialism and communism. And of course here, this is a couple books here, some paper. That's actually an apple right there. It's supposed to be an apple. I don't know if you thought that or not, but that's for the teacher, right? So education. So there you go. There you go, guys. We have it. Over here, first IR, everything in place. So we got the second over here. So hey, just want to say in wrapping up, hey, hope you guys enjoyed the overview here. And I would just say, like always, our lives, if you're watching this video right now, your life has totally, absolutely been changed forever by the Industrial Revolution. And you think about it, 1750 is when it began. That's only several hundred years ago. In the last several hundred years, look at where we've gone from and where we are now and where we're going. So our lives have been drastically changed. So I would encourage you to, if you found anything at all interesting about any of the topics in the first or second IR, I would encourage you to go out and do some of your own research. Because like I've said before, that's how we learn ultimately, isn't it? Right? We need to become self-learners. We need to grab on to ideas and areas that we're interested in, and then go out and do some of our own individual research. So hopefully this will motivate you to do some of that. Also, as we move forward, we will not forget the Industrial Revolution, because in our next unit on imperialism, we're going to find out that it was the highly industrialized countries of Western Europe that were the first countries to be involved in imperialism, and that's not by accident. It's not by accident. There's an incredible connection between industrialization and imperialism. So when we get into our unit on imperialism, we will be referring back to the Industrial Revolution. So hey, hope you've enjoyed this and gotten something out of it, and I will see you later when we begin talking about imperialism. Bye for now.